All right. On this 24th day, globally, we mark it as the International Day of Education. And our next conversation is going to be marking the International Day of Education, which is a day set aside by who? UNESCO. To say, hey, mambo, your education, iko hapo. We are joined by Lillian Mwai Ndegwa. She's the country director at Swisscontact. She's been here before. Good morning, Lillian. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and good morning.
Good to see you.
Hashtag happy to be here.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
To welcome you to the conversation, Lillian, City has the day's African proverb brought to you by Ecobank, the Pan-African Bank, because he goes across Africa every single week and then he mines proverbs from that country.
Okay.
This time, Ecobank, the Pan-African Bank, has helped him to go to the Kingdom of
Morocco.
Very good.
Wow.
Which, as you very well know, has the form of government, a unique one known as the unitary parliamentary semi-constitutional monarchy.
Unitary parliamentary semi-constitutional kingdom of monarchs. Say again. Unitary parliamentary semi-constitutional monarchy.
She's right when she says kingdom.
Okay.
Because you can't be a monarchy without a kingdom. Yes, like we don't have a monarchy. Though we have leaders who
Are kings.
who think, imagine,
they're kings.
conduct themselves in a manner befitting a certain majesty.
Okay.
But you cannot stop effort and you cannot stop progress. Now the proverb, if you have a friend like honey, don't eat him all at once.
If you have a friend like honey, don't eat him all at once. I was asking earlier where the punctuation comes in. If you have a friend, comma, like honey, comma, don't eat him more than once, all at once. If you have a friend like honey, comma, don't eat him all at once. Full stop.
Right. Punctuations are everything.
Where would you put yours, Lillian?
Everywhere you put it was correct.
Okay.
I agree with her.
Sawa. If, comma, you, comma.
No. How you said it, that if you have a friend, comma, like honey, comma, don't eat him all at once.
What's your interpretation of it?
My interpretation of it is, I think it's when you have something good, there's the friend in this case, or maybe it's money or whatever it is you have. Don't consume it all at once. Use it slowly. Be wise. Think it through. Take your time. And slowly, it will continue to give you good value over time if you consume it slowly. But if you finish all at once, then when you really are in need of it, it will not be there. It will not be available.
A good one. Right, City?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Very well executed.
International Day of Education, you're basically just ranking her very high.
It
Pass.
is, but also think about it, even from the point of view of the education sector. Look at where a child starts from. They've started walking, they know a few words, they even know how to insult people. That one. Then they go to school. And that process, it's incremental. It's never at once. This person who is a great achiever didn't start as a great achiever, started as a toddler. So it's a principle that applies.
Great.
And if that child isn't molded well, that which you see, the end product wouldn't quite be what it is, would it? That is from an educational perspective.
Very good.
Yes.
So, Lillian, what is Swisscontact and how are you involved in education matters?
Oh, great question. Swisscontact is an INGO that was formed in Switzerland, as the name would say, over 60 years ago, with the premise of solving for international development projects by creating economic empowerment. That's our angle. There are many NGOs out there. Some focus on humanitarian response or emergency response, but our focus is creating projects that link to economic empowerment. And so here in Kenya, specifically, we do have a project that's dubbed Propeller that focuses on creating education and skills for young plumbers and electricians. So using a curricular that is very focused on what the private sector needs, then we are able to create jobs by working closely with them and together with the NITA and TVET as well, and the local private sector.
Okay. What is the theme for this year's International Day of Education?
So this year's theme is really around pushing for education for peace. That's the overarching goal, but mainly focusing on reduce on hate speech, because as we know, there's a lot of things happening globally, and what UNESCO have identified is that there are a lot of increase in anti-Semitic activities, anti-racism. There's just a lot of discrimination conversations happening on social media. And so they want to use educators like teachers to be able to foster peaceful thoughts, being able to work with different people, push for diversity thoughts so that people don't start viewing their neighbors as bad people, but to push for education systems to actually allow for integration, allow for people to value their neighbors and people who have different opinions on different things. So that's the whole theme around what they're doing today.
You know, often when people talk about education, you're thinking about primary and secondary. We forget that post-secondary education is still part of education. And of course, your programs, like you've told us, they focus on the post-secondary, on bringing skill to people. Is there a linkage between the lack of focus on post-secondary education for many and what we're talking about today, peace and lack of peace?
Yes, there is a link. I believe when you are maybe in the primary or tertiary years of education, the children are not they don't know much about what's happening in the world. They're kind of limited to what's happening in their home state, in their society. They don't have that awareness. And they go to school, and the parents is really the focal point of being able to guide what is going to happen in their life. But as they grow older, as they become more mature and they discover many things in the world, they start watching things, crime shows and all these interesting things that they're watching. And then now they're finished university and there are no opportunities for them. I mean, high school rather. They're not able to go to a vocational education institution, or they're not able to go to a university in itself. So they have a lot of time. And as we know that an idle mind is a devil's workshop, as it is playground. So they start thinking about vices and things that they can do to get money because they want money. And what popular culture is now pushing for is a flashy lifestyle. You need to be able to have this phone and have this headset and this watch. And if they have no skill, they think, well, I could easily get involved in different activities. And interestingly, UN Habitat shared some data on the crime rates here in Kenya. And they're saying that 57% of the crimes that are happening in Kenya are done by young people. So that definitely there's a linkage. If people are unemployed and then 57% of the crime is being linked to young people, then definitely the lack of a good and comprehensive education system at those levels then is contributing.
You know, as you give the statistics, my mind went to this question. Is there any country whose statistics are that crimes are committed by older people?
I thought about that when I was reading that data. I was also
you thought about it as well?
Yes.
Yes. So if you have a country that boasts a young population, then you are likely to see more crimes simply because of those numbers.
Yes. True.
Even as you say that, that's very interesting, because there is a crime series. Well, I won't call it a crime series. It looks at rehabilitated young men and women in Kenya. And they talk about their life in crime. And there's one particular story that strikes me as you say this, because this young boy talks about the fact that he was not in school at some point. And there was, this prolonged violence between his mother and his then father, or who, not necessarily his mother's husband, but his father. And the amount of 2,000 kept ringing in his head, because it is what this woman was demanding of this man to be able to do things here and there. So obviously school fees was out of the question, so they were at home. And he ran into some company, essentially, where they would go and steal. And on that day when he agreed to join the gang, Whatever they did, he was paid 2,000 shillings.
Oh, wow.
He took that 2,000 shillings and he went and gave it to his mother. His mother asked him where he got the money from, and he said, I'm not discussing that right now. But if this is going ahead, that's not the issue. But if this is going to sort out this issue where we cannot sleep, people are crazy, killing each other every day, here is the 2,000 shillings and let us move. He said the joy on his mother's face drove him to go back the next day and look for more. So school, out of the question. We're not going to go to school. I found a way where I can get this money, we have peace, we can sleep. My siblings, we have something to eat that day. So yes, direct linkage. But what is being done in school to remove the thought that such a thing and practice can never be an option again? Should that not be where then the focus is? Because he tells this story years later, but in an education system, those vices still exist. Many would argue that even while children are going to school, those things are being done. What would be the best solution or the best situation whereby you have people in school that definitely would be developed and built up whereby crime is not an option?
Say that's a very good observation, because it's true, and that's what's actually happening. I think this solution to how do we encourage peace, how do we encourage people to actually have jobs so then they don't get involved in crime, is requires a multidimensional response. So there's not only one response that can be able to solve for this problem. It has to be addressed at different levels. I could speak of a few. The first one that's been advocated today by UNESCO, and I would want to speak about it, is how do we make sure that even in school, as you're training on chemistry and biology and all these other things, that we also talk about the importance of loving your neighbor, understanding that you respect the person and their property, and you value having safety even within your community, and how you can be an agent of peace in your community. That's the first thing. The second thing is also looking at, okay, there are people who are actually finishing and graduating from high school every year, and last year 900,000 about of them finished their high school education. Only 25% of those were able to get C and above to be admitted into the university here in Kenya. So what happens to the 75%? We are saying that we would want them to get into TVETs and such like. But then again, when they get into TVET and they come out, they still are not able to get some of these jobs because those skills are not what the industry is asking for. The same to the ones who come out of university. Only a few, about 30%, are absorbed into the job market when they finish their university education. So what is happening there? Are we linking with the private sector to understand exactly what their needs are at that level, so that whatever path that you take, be it TVET, be it the academic path, you actually get out and there are people ready to absorb you because they feel that they need you and that you are linked to the future that they want to see their companies grow into. And then we're able to see holistic economic development in the country. So I would say that there are different levels, but I believe everyone has a role to play. We would need to strengthen our education system to be holistic, to look at those elements of peace and integrity and all that stuff, in addition to strengthening it so that it is responsive to industry needs.
If you look at a curriculum, what you're saying, where would it fit in? Civic education? Humanities? Or do we need a
religious education?
Something deliberate, a deliberate subject that is created specifically.
Called what? Peace and tranquility.
Yes.
Peace,
How
love,
about
and harmony.
How about responsible citizenship?
That is civic education. Isn't it?
Yes, because
Civics.
the space for it exists. Is the content adequate?
That's a good question.
Because if this is taught, and I say deliberately, okay, the country of Germany is mentioned as one, Rwanda is mentioned as another, Israel is mentioned as another. Countries that have taken deliberate steps to ensure that the education system teaches a certain aspect of their history, so everybody knows about it. There's no pretending that it didn't happen, that you don't know, that there was no Holocaust. You know the part that was played by citizens of your country. And it's taught at every stage and up to university. It is a taught subject. Now, that's deliberate. When you talk about a holistic educational system that gives people an opportunity, it existed even before the 844 system came in, where you had the option, because you were introduced. It wasn't just languages, technical subjects. You were introduced to them at a certain age. You could then decide what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go. And then there were specific secondary schools that had a strong leaning, for instance, towards technical and commercial. They had that leaning. Some just had commercial, some had technical and commercial, some just had technical. But there were secondary schools. You're taught history, English and all that, but the focus was on technical. Now, the 844 system attempted to segregate so that you could actually ensure that someone segues into this area of specialty. But I wondered what they were doing, because that already existed. But then the 844 system came and said it was supposed to improve it. It didn't. It's like what had existed just completely disappeared. Now, we are trying to revisit this same discussion. We had polytechnics that people went to. We had what we call then village polytechnics that people went to. Now, how do these institutions then ensure that what they do or teach fits in with industry requirements? Again, you found industry was an integral part of these institutions. When people went for internships or attachments, there are courses that you would have an attachment, or after first, second year, at the end of it, an attachment. Third year, an attachment. Meaning, by the time you actually left, I'm talking about polytechnics, you had individuals who actually knew exactly what to do. So the issue of employment was not even a discussion. You got employment. Again, that system was watered down with some newfangled ideas that went God knows where. Now, here we are again with some newfangled ideas, really new and fangled completely. Okay? This one is just fangled and tangled. And here we are trying to say, this is what we want to do. Then you look at the so-called university. The university isn't a problem, but the thinking around it is, because it's like if you don't go to university, you haven't done anything. That thinking is completely wrong. Not everybody wants to go to university. And not everything that you want to do needs a university education.
True.
But our education system doesn't seem to emphasize that. And look at what parents then end up doing. Because they are also caught up in that momentum. And everybody thinks university. And if you don't go to university, it's like you never really amounted to much. Again, that thinking is completely erroneous. And then we keep talking about a huge skill gap. You want to build a pipeline, you have to import technicians. Yes, we have polytechnics. You want to do something, we don't have enough plumbers. You want to do this, we don't have enough bricklayers. Now, so this disconnect, what part does, is it Swissconsult or Swissconnect?
Swisscontact.
Yeah, well, okay, I think Connect, yes. How do you fit into all this?
That's a really good question, and great observations. I would say that's true. Just to underscore something is that we as a nation, we really do make great visionary, like strategic statements, and we will say we want to transition into green skills. We say we want to industrialize. We want to get into more manufacturing. I think definitely after every big statement, it's important that we see how do we operationalize that. Is it trickling down to the education system so that when we say we are working towards the green transition, this is how we are doing it, and this is how it's trickling, and these are the subjects and the units, and if it's at an academic level, this is what you need to pursue, and this is where you'll find it, and if it's at a tertiary level, it is offered at, Nyeri Polytechnic or Murang or Kisumu, and this is how that links to the overall goal. And I feel like that's something we need to get better at, and that we can definitely improve on. That said, Swisscontact's experience, as I shared, we have done it for over 60 years, where we decided, because it was founded by former CEOs of the private sector, and they say that, okay, now we have a lot of time and we have a lot of experience. What if we applied this private sector lens and thinking into solving international development challenges? So we look at it from more of what I'm sharing. We have this big goal. Then how do we link that to the education system or the healthcare system or different things? So our role really as Swisscontact is to facilitate. We come into the market and we say we would want to implement a skills development program. We do an analysis and say construction would be a great sector because we've spoken to private sector and they say plumbing and electrical are key needs and areas of opportunity for a lot of employment. And then we look at the market, we analyze the market. So we will not bring a solution from Cambodia or from Switzerland or elsewhere and say we want to bring it the way it is and implement it in Kenya. We will look at the market system, we will do an analysis of that market system, identify who are the actors, who are the private sector actors, who are the government actors who would need to be able to do this, who in the government would we partner with, should we partner with the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Agriculture, or just mapping out who are the actors, then identify how it's currently working, identify where the gaps are. And then as facilitators, because our main aim is to provide long-term sustainable impact, is then to identify how do we help then this actor bridge this gap. So is it that you don't have a good the curriculum is good but is not being implemented well because of a certain lack of maybe trainers or trainer or mentors? Then we will, together with that institution, design a trainer of trainers or a trainer of mentors or a responsive curriculum that would allow that part of that system to start working. Then go to a different, but in that same ecosystem, work with each one of them to help them get to the capacity that they need to, so that now that market system can start working. It is a long-term journey with market systems development, as we call it. It doesn't take 2 years or 3 years. Like, I can't come and say I've done this propeller project for 3 years. I have made a big change in the TVET sector here in Kenya. What we have seen from our experience is that for such market system development programs that are supposed to lead to long-term positivity in the society, takes about 12 years to 15 years. So you design in phases, and you say in this first phase, we will be able to achieve certain goals. Then look at what you've been able to achieve in those 3 years. Has it worked? Did it not work? What do we need to change? Then together with the actors, we shift. We keep on shifting until all the cogs start working together.
Okay.
Yeah.
60 years.
Well, 60 years of being in the country. One, you've had enough time to understand the country. You've had enough time to do these 12-year programs.
Yes.
So, 2 questions. What has success looked like? And where can we locate this success so you can tell us, you see this one, 12 years down the line.
That is the picture.
This is where we started and this is where we are. On your marks, get set, go.
Great question. So for this particular project, Propeller, we've been implementing it. This is our 2nd year. But I can speak about Swisscontact and this approach in a different sector and what we did and the results. So when we've been here from 1995 in Kenya, Swisscontact, and we are really known for financial inclusions project that we called IFP. And this project, we designed it to be able to help Kenya move to a more financial inclusive, so that people at the bottom of the pyramid were able to have access to finance, they were able to get into banks, and they were able to have accounts, and they were able to form SACCOs and such. So through this financial inclusion program that happened and ran for 14 years, we were able to target and work with some of the leading banks, SACCOs, the Ministry of Cooperatives. One such notable bank was Equity Bank. When they were moving and redefining themselves from a housing society, they were amongst the actors that we selected within that ecosystem that we could work with to help them define what is it exactly you would want to do so that you can reach the people who are at the bottom. What type of products? What do you need to provide them? So we did a bit of capacity building with them, help them design their products, not only for them. We also worked with Juhudi Kilimo. It was also one of the outcomes of that project. And as I shared, our solutions have to be sustainable and are able to be left within that ecosystem when that project ends. So the project ended in 2020, and those examples that I've given, just amongst the few, are still existing, and they're still doing their mandate as they had been designed to do. So our hope is that in another 12 years, or is it 10 years from now, that all the work that we are putting in right now will be able to be visible, that we will have strengthened TVET systems. There are local private actors who are strengthened to start participating in skills development for the purposes of economic growth of the country, that the government, through our help, will be able to help them facilitate how they engage with private sector, how they are able to incentivize and create policies that encourage private sector to want to participate and provide these opportunities for young people to be able to have apprenticeship opportunities in their organizations. So basically, I've been able to give that one good example. But yeah.
Let's look at something that you mentioned earlier, where you talk about a 25 against a 75% of students who will not be able to transition to university. So there's the TVET option for them and other tertiary institutions. However, there's a very large number of students also who then will not be able to make it, even to TVET, because there is a mark that you must have achieved. So we have a whole lot of people for whom we don't know what's going to happen with them education-wise. Now, when you talk about strengthening TVETs and tertiary institutions, what suggestions or what mechanisms can be put in place for a very large number of the educated or those in that education transition period for whom there is no option, and it's not a guess, there is no option? What can be done for them? They've been through high school, they've finished secondary school level, they've not graded to the point whereby it has already been set by the education institution that you need to have achieved this grade in order to move to the next level. They've not done that, but they're in a majority.
True.
What do we do? What should we do? What should be discussed and implemented for them? Bridging courses, what should it be?
Great. Interestingly, the more we continue to engage with the TVET system, the more you realize, and the reason why people have such a negative opinion of TVET is because first, people have graded that TVET is for failures. And the reason why they call it that TVET is for failures is because the level of entry and the barrier of entry is pretty low. Do you know that even a class 8 dropout can do TVET? They can go through the National Industrial Training Authority, get a grade 1 certification, even when they do not have that high school education. And I feel the biggest challenge we face is that we do not have a TVET system. We do have a TVET system. It is how it has been marketed and packaged such that even when you get that E or something, you feel like you're a failure, there's nothing for you, and there's actually a path you can take. It might seem long and not as direct as some of the other paths, but it does pay. So you'll find there are many other organizations as well that are able to undertake this TVET training. Some of them go into like Kisumu or Mombasa in Kilifi and very remote areas, and they're just being able to create short courses that are TVET enabled or NITA enabled, and they make sure that those guys get those basic skills to become a plumber or an electrician. Problem is, people don't know about these pathways. People don't see these opportunities.
Are they accessible?
Are they there?
Well, I am telling you what the TVET is supposed to do.
Yeah.
The challenge is, again, maybe the TVET institutions at that area are not well equipped, or they are not responsive to what is needed. But the way TVET was designed, that is how it's supposed to
To
be.
be
Have
able
a
to do
bridging
it.
course?
Not a bridging course that
You
you are
just
able,
enter.
you can
Like-
enter.
Get in
From
no matter
standard 8,
what.
you can get into
Yeah.
an institution. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
VTI, and then
Yes.
you go in and you get from grade 1 and you
Yes.
keep moving
You
up.
keep advancing.
The issue, though, just like we are asking, is the investment that's been put into it. And so if we talk about education for peace and saying, for us to focus on this, even as you're teaching people, your civic duty, your human values tell you that, you should not fight, you should not steal, you should not do all these things. If at the end of this, the opportunities are not there, circumstances may lead you to this. Circumstances will lead you to be taken advantage of by somebody who would like you to take up arms and fight their war,
Yes,
right?
true.
So it's these things that end up there. That's why we said inequalities in our education system would be fueling this violence and a life of crime. The inequalities would start from there, from accessing information.
Exactly.
And then accessing the opportunities. If you got an E and you're wondering, so what do I do? If there was a clear pathway for you in your locality and you know, so next thing I do is I apply into this, I start here, this is what I'm interested in doing. Or even if you had a C, but your interest was in this particular skill, you also know that this is how it is and this is how easy I can get into it. And those institutions are clearly identifiable and they're well funded. Then we'd be moving somewhere. Like you said, so we have the national polytechnics. Those ones are big, they're known, everybody knows. There's a big gate just like a university, it's known. We have the other polytechnics and technical institutions known. We have counties also are running their vocational training institutes. They've put in all this, county government of blah, blah, blah. Take one in a county or two in a county. In a sub-county and village level, how many of these are we seeing? And how accessible are they? And how equipped or resourced are they to actually support this system, the education system? From your experience, what have you seen?
I would say that I don't think we are short of TVET institutions in this country. I believe that we have more than 200 TVET institutions in this country. I think that the challenges we faced first and foremost is what we've just discussed, is the lack of information. It's not trickling down to the secondary level. We're not giving it as an option. We're not explaining, don't give up, don't worry. If this doesn't work, go for this. Because even the teachers, I remember I had a conversation with a colleague also who's in the TVET space, and they were telling me they'd gone to a high school to try and encourage the students, TVET is a pathway, you can get jobs easily, you can, opportunities locally and abroad and such. And the teacher in the school called her aside later on and she's like, we are trying to make sure we get as many A's as possible. And you're talking about TVET, there's a conflict there. There's a conflict because the society as we know it and the culture that we have as a society collectively is that we push for academia, going to university, how many A's, a school that has the most A's, and which is important. I mean, education in terms of good grades is important. But then why do we see TVET as not a pathway? Have we even educated our teachers for them to understand it a bit better so that as they're finishing the secondary education, as you shared, that I got a C, but I'm more interested in applying my
it's not
hand.
Attractive because the local TVET that you see there is just in shambles.
And also it's in shambles, and there's no story of there's no success
there's
story.
There's nothing that comes out of that.
Look at this comment that Angela has made, and I think it's just fundamental to this very thing that we're talking about, because she talked about the VTCs being less funded, not enough classes, instructors are not paid. She's given an example of over 25 VTCs in one particular area and no infrastructure. Now, you can imagine, we are saying that people are not attracted to this offer because we've not made it attractive. Right? If you put in as much effort, if you make sure that there is a structure that then people can see and experience, the likelihood of more people coming to it then increases. But we cannot, I dare say, forget it. You cannot say that this is an option or that you're even saying, and then you've not even put an ounce of sweat towards making sure that that option is one that is viable for the majority of students who go through the system in this country. Can you imagine that the option that we are giving for a majority of students is in a mess infrastructurally? What do we expect to happen if the very the basic we're not able to deliver on? And we need that for the majority of students who pass through the school system.
It is true. And I think it takes me back to the point where I was saying we have made big statements as a country that we want to push maybe for TVET and such, or we want to push for green transition or digitization. But what are we doing so that it trickles down to the VTCs, that it trickles down to the people who are more marginalized than any other person. And I think that's our work, is to ask those questions, I would say, is to ask, how does this translate? After we've said the statements, how does this translate? And then go to your local and look, are people being absorbed into them? But it is clear, and what I have seen when I have gone around is that the structure is there. There's a building, there's a space allocated, that there's a vocational education training center, and maybe it's not well equipped. And I know that for a fact, the PS of TVET, Dr. Moria, she is committed, and I know that she's trying to push for TVET to be widely accepted, to solve for the infrastructure issues. But as I've said, these things take time. It does. And as Siti shared earlier, and I'm not speaking for anybody, I'm just saying from my own personal experience.
Do not worry. I'm not going to jump on your neck. I'm just taking a deep breath.
Okay. But as Siti said, as we shared, it does take time because there's a lot of unlearning as a society that we need to do. Because assuming I even came and equipped this place with the best TVET institution, and the society still says that TVET is for failures. Yeah, we have to do a lot, and that's why I said it's a multidimensional problem that we need to deal with from different aspects. There's what the government should do, there's what the private sector should do, there's what the TVET institution should do, there's what us as the society should do in encouraging our children. What I heard in Switzerland when I visited, because there the options for TVET or taking at academia are very present, and many 60 to 70% of the youth opt to go to a TVET as opposed to going after they finish their high school. But when you speak to the young people and ask them, why did you decide to take this route? They say, my father, my mother took this route, and that is what has fed our family. And if you talk to the one who takes the academic route, they'll say, my parents are scholars, or they have white-collar jobs, and that's why I took that. So for us, when you look at our society right now, how many success stories do we have? That's why I'm saying it takes a bit of time. There's the opportunity we are speaking about. There are opportunities. You can get jobs locally. You can migrate. You can do. But then, do we have success stories? So we will start now. We will progress. And then in future, in about 6-7 years, when we actually have some success stories that can actually say, hey, I have done this. I am here in my life. Then we can really start seeing the adoption as well from that level.
You know me, I'm going to be a wet blanket on this one.
Please.
If I look at the education sector, where just the secondary school system, primary school system that we have, the only reason why the success story in education exists in the manner it does today is because the private sector has intervened. At every level and at every stage. The private sector would probably need to intervene in TVETs.
Yes.
Because we are a country, the German government had wanted to build us a technical university. Build. The way the Japanese built JKU at. Our politics and the way we go about our business, the messy fashion in which we handle critical things. That one opportunity... There are talks about, there's this, but that one went. Okay? So, when we talk about TVET and government involvement and the interest, successive governments have shown they have no interest whatsoever. What they have an interest in is talking and placating people and talking about, yes, we're doing. That is how it is run. It is talked about. Because if the intention matched the talk, hey, where would we be?
We'll be very, very far.
Yes, we are not far. And does it look like we're going to be far? It doesn't look like we're going to be far.
What I can say in the Propeller project, we are working with local private sector. The people who are offering the job, the organizations offering the jobs to the young people so that they're able to do a dual apprenticeship program are local companies. They are not companies established abroad. They are owned by local private sector. And from that small group sample that we are working with, they are interested in participating in helping to develop those industries. I believe the challenge that we have, and which I have seen as we have tried to roll out this program, is that they need they need incentives, because they're saying, I'm participating in education, I am building for my workforce, which is great.
Yep.
but I would need some incentives, and I guess the incentives would only be able to come from the government. And I believe that, and as I agree with City, if private sector is at the forefront, they are more innovative, they are more responsive, they create 80 to 90% of new jobs every year. They're the ones who are able to actually absorb these young people when they come out of TVETs or universities, and definitely they should be at the forefront, and that's what we're advocating for. As I had mentioned, Swisscontact advocates for private sector engagement in international development, meaning that to solve for economic growth challenges, and that is something that we hope to see materialize even here in Kenya.
How can you also make private sector investment in TVETs and VTCs increase? Because you have very many private sector colleges, they're offering whatever courses that would qualify as TVETs. But then, do they have success stories? Do they graduate into, this is a successful TVET? So we know one. We're talking about the Nairobi Institute of Business Studies. The founder passed away the other day, but she's a success story in that it's become a brand. Can you get others coming in to invest in it?
Yes, so when you talk about the private sector, we're only not talking about like the plumbing or electrical companies or the ones that are offering direct jobs. We are also talking about training institutions. For example, in the Propeller project, we work with Don Bosco Boys Town. It's privately owned TVET, and they're known for providing well-skilled plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and masonries, and they are also certified by TVET and NITA to be able to run these programs. There are also other good private TVET institutions like the East Africa College of Technology, ECT, in Babadogo Road there. They also are well known for that as well. So there's an opportunity for TVET schools to come from the private sector. There's an opportunity for private sector itself to get engaged. But remember, when we talk about solutions at scale, who's able to achieve scale? Who's able to get to the masses?
It's garment.
Thank you.
It's garment.
Thank you.
It's funded by us.
Yes.
We thank you, Lillian, for coming and joining us.
Thank you.
Happy International Day of Education to you and to others. Lillian Mwai Ndegwa is the country director at Swisscontact. She's been our guest as we mark the International Day of Education, talking about education for peace as set by UNESCO. These conversations continue.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.